of 2021 and some of our Office of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion staff. My name is Damika Withers. I am the Chief Economic Equity and Inclusion Officer for Franklin County's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. And we are just overly excited today to talk to you today about our Racial Equity Council and the work that is ahead. The Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion is charged with leading diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts here at Franklin County in our internal Board of Commissioner organization and our external economic equity, building Franklin County's supplier diversity for economic growth. I first want to thank our Franklin County Commissioners, Sean O'Grady, Kevin Boyson, our President, Commissioner Crawley, and our County Administrator, Kenneth Wilson, for their unwavering support in all the efforts and work that they have done in our diversity, equity, and inclusion space. Our Racial Equity Council was created by our county administrator who saw it fit to make sure that we are coming together by our colleagues and making decisions for you and by you, all of our Board of Commissioner staff agencies, to come together and provide recommendations so we can help together build a sustainable framework for diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility practices in all of our Board of Commissioner agencies. I have with me today Leandra Chikuros, who will be facilitating the conversation. She is our Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Administrator, who is responsible for our internal efforts at our Board of Commissioner agencies of not only leading out on the Racial Equity Council, but leading out our initiatives and practices of DEI. I will turn it over now to Leandra Chikuros, who will be facilitating the conversation with our 2021 Racial Equity alumni who have joined us today. Leandra?
Thank you so much, and welcome, and thank you for being here and attending our Lunch and Learn. We wanted to take the time to discuss with you your experiences serving on the Racial Equity Council and provide a little insight to future applicants about what it's like to participate and provide feedback. With us, we have Deputy Director of Communications for Job and Family Services, Bart Logan, and Assistant Director for the Department of Animal Care and Control, Dwayne Young. Thank you again for joining us. To provide a little background for everyone on the call, the inaugural Racial Equity Council was co-chaired by Bart with the assistance of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion consultant Courtney Kerrigan of Raising the Bar Performance Group. The council provided invaluable contributions to the important discussions of race and equity and created recommendations for all Board of Commissioner agencies. We are currently accepting applications for the 2022 Racial Equity Council, which will focus on implementation of 3 of the 11 recommendations that were adopted by the commissioners on 12/14/21. These 3 are creating Racial Equity Council subgroups within BOC agencies, implementing and maintaining DEI standards into BOC agencies, and the last is telling our story about how Franklin County is ingraining racial equity into operations and services. This is an exciting opportunity to learn more from previous council members, and I am so excited to get started with the questions. Are we ready to begin? So the first question I have, tell us about some activities and your experience serving as a member for the Racial Equity Council. Whomever would like to go first.
Yeah, absolutely. So some of the activities that we would normally do during our meetings, are in the news. So we'll start our meetings off with what's happening in the news, what's happening in our world right now around DE&I. And what that gave us was the opportunity to discuss these issues that are impacting our lives right now before we move forward with building out what it looks like to make changes within our county and for our residents. So those type of conversations were transparent, were direct, and gave us the opportunity to listen to the perspective of other individuals on the council, and for us who have the same likenesses, just hearing how it's impacted us and our families and our immediate groups and communities outside of work. Another thing that we did as far as activities were breakout sessions and personal training. So just as much as it is we are a group of people coming on the council to build out and provide recommendations for how to move the county forward in this direction. It was also opportunity for us to receive personal training on our biases, implicit and explicit biases, and giving us challenging us to think outside of the scope of our normal world and stepping into the shoes of others to view it from their perspective. And then the next thing I'll talk about really is just my experience just being a member on there. It's really empowering to be able to be influential and in this type of way in our county. When we all come apply for these jobs and get hired in our respective positions, our mission and our goals are kind of tunneled into our specific agencies. And what this did was gave us the opportunity to be empowered to make an even larger impact outside of our agency, outside of our particular position, which is really rewarding personally. And then to be able to see now and envision how it will look in the future, it's rewarding to know that you had an impact in making a difference that way.
That's awesome. Thank you so much.
I guess I could jump in a bit. I think one of the things, and you touched on that, training that we received. One of the first things that we did just right out of the gate was this non-routine leadership training. And so that was to kind of give us the framework in the lens to approach this work, the capital W work. And so that really focused on, we call them the four Ds through that. And that's, starting by defining your goals. So we're not trying to be reactionary instead and say, here's the policy, we need to change that to this. Instead, we say, what is the overarching goal that we're looking for this? And then you're able from there to detect problems or barriers to achieving that, looking then to diagnose what are the causes of those barriers, those symptoms that we're seeing, and then look at defining the options, the solutions that we may have to that. And the one is you don't have delivering of solutions and we fixed it because this is something, this work is going to be the work that, work of a lifetime. It's stuff that will must outlast us. And it's stuff that's going to change as we encounter new barriers as the landscape shifts. So I think it was a really important way for us to approach this work. And it's one of those things that what was also helpful about this is I've also been able to, take things like the 4Ds and apply them in my day-to-day job as a supervisor. So not only are you getting to do this work that I think a lot of us, it's the reason we get into public service, right? Because we want to make the world a better place, or at least leave the room a bit better off than the one we came in. It all came, I think, from our charge from the county administrator, Ken Wilson, to ingrain it in our DNA. And it's just, it's one of those exciting challenges. I think one of the biggest challenges with my experience, and I think with a lot of us, is because, you're ready to go. You were hyped. You want to undo 400 years of systemic racism right away and get going. And how that kind of 4D training and everything else is, Courtney goes back and says a lot. You need to slow down before you move fast. We are dealing with institutions here, and racism, and that is not an excuse to say this is too big of a problem that we can't deal with it. But we have to be systematic about it, just as systematic as the people that put those policies together, and most of them, that look like me, frankly, that were when they enacted them. So I think it really gave us the right mindset for it. And it was just an incredible experience.
That is awesome. Thank you so much. And you touched on a wonderful point. I would think a lot of individuals would like to know patience is key in this work, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much. The second question I have, can you describe what it was like to create the recommendations for the BOC agencies and engage in such an important initiative?
Yeah, so I mean, it was a lot of work. Like Bart mentioned, it is a slow, steady process. If you're building anything that you want to last, it's brick by brick. It's building the foundation, building things upon it, and it does. Structures aren't just erected at a snap of a finger. So it was very tedious and intentional type of work. But what that experience was like, it was kind of invigorating. The fact that we're able to build and create something, we're able to reform systems and just be really influential in thinking about the future and providing structure and in a way that it allows for it to grow. And like Bart mentioned, this is something that will outlive us. And so building it in a way to where it's not an end to it, but it's something that can continue to grow. So yeah, just a lot of work, talking back and forth. Everybody wanted to kind of get to an end result quickly. And so realizing that timelines may have to be pushed out longer and longer because we want to do the work right. And we want to make sure that we're considering every aspect that we can consider with the mindsets collectively in the group. But yeah.
I mean, I agree with that. I think one of the other things that I really liked about, the work to create these recommendations is that you had such just a robust diversity of lived experience, but also, diversity of work experience. And perhaps, so, I mean, we had everyone from line staff up to assistant directors from all 14 Board of Commissioners agencies in here, and all approaching and having these conversations with his peers, and recognizing that I think one of the keys and what was helpful for me is knowing that we've all got blinders, right? And then in addition to kind of implicit biases, you don't know what you don't know, and so it really allowed, I mean, a lot of time to just kind of sit back and say, we can't come into these with kind of preformed solutions. And that's what was so great about the work group process, where we broke into our different work groups. And so you were able to kind of, it's a pretty large council, 25, nearly 30 people. So you had those kind of smaller groups of folks that were focused on a certain subject matter, whether that was operations, whether that was HR and training, or whether that was economic equity and empowerment. And to try to kind of zero in on these areas and kind of keep that discussion going on with people that you can continue to draw from and learn more from. I think it was really helpful to have that kind of work group area, and that it allowed us to kind of tailor these and then still bring them back to everybody. So they truly were the entire council's recommendation. It wasn't just, this work group working, plowing away on 2, 3, or 4 of them, and then everyone rubber stamping them. There really continued to be that robust discussion. I think that was what was really important for it, one of the differences.
Yeah. That is amazing. How did it feel when the recommendations were adopted in December? Was it relief? Was it a sense of accomplishment? And possibly a little bit of disbelief, like we put in so much time and effort and work. How did it feel to you?
It did feel like we've made a great accomplishment, but also it felt like, man, that was a lot of work that we had to do to get to this point, but there's still so much more work to be done. And I was really personally grateful that, we got this commission from our Board of Commissioners and from our county administrator. And when you really think about engraving something into the DNA, into the make of what a system or organization or what it is, you have to be intentional, and it's intricate, and it's building on top of each other. So yeah, I felt very accomplished, like, oh, I did a great work in the county. This is something I can stamp on, but man, there's so much more work to be done, and we need more people to be able to push this work forward, because it can also be draining as well, because these are issues that impact all of us in our community. And that's one thing through these sessions that Courtney and our leaders were intentional about telling us, like, hey, it's okay, you need to breathe, it's okay, you're gonna have to decompress, because these are heavy real life issues. And so I was grateful to be a part of the inaugural council and bringing it this far, but I'm also hopeful that we have folks that will take this work and continue to carry it on, because it is necessary.
Yeah.
I mean, it's it's kind of like an old, sports and coaching cliche where it's, they get just like Nick Saban, you've just won the college football, playoff game. And it's like, well, we're gonna sit here and we're gonna enjoy it today, but tomorrow it's right back to work. But that really, I think, was the approach for it. But I think it is, like, to get to your point, Dwayne, like, it's so important to celebrate those successes. And this, I think, was a really big success for this guy. I mean, we were at the National Association of Counties conference over the weekend and trying and learning and trying to figure out what are the other best practices from other counties. And I'm not saying that other counties aren't doing this work, but it was not front and center and so it was one of those things that, just makes you really proud to be part of the county that, that has embraced this challenge, that is recognized, that's called it out and been explicit about it. This is, work that predated the uprisings in 2020, but those, really emphasized it and helped provide that lens for us to continue this work. But it is just, I think, that recognition that, what we're trying to do is something that's so big that ingrained in our DNA that, yes, you feel so excited to get these recommendations done, but you want to say, okay, I want to start seeing these get into place, doing that ingraining work. And that's the work that the second cohort's really going to be able to get to do. And so I think such an exciting opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. Which is your favorite recommendation and why?
So I'll kick us off with that. So we got so many of them that are great. One of the recommendations that I am most passionate about is being able to showcase the resources that the county offers and make to our residents and making it accessible. So, and I will say this, there are many, many great resources and things that the county offers to the residents that the residents simply just don't know about. There are things that me personally, I didn't know about until I became an employee here. And I'm like, oh, there's this resource, there's that resource. And everyone has people attached in their personal communities. You see struggle with different situations and not even know that the county offers relief for some of their hardships. But they just don't know, they don't have one place to just land on to say, okay, hey, this is where I go to, and this will show me all of the resources that the county offers agency by agency. So the recommendation is showcase available resources available in the community to support all Franklin County partners. That's just really, really important because there are different, I've lived in different states and different counties and cities. And Franklin County is, quite frankly, unique. And hearing the passion from our commissioners, hearing the passion from our county administrator, not everyone is privy to that, and see the hard work that's being poured into our employees here and our residents. And I think that providing this type of platform, this recommendation, and this type of setting to where folks have one place to go to will really relieve a lot of that congestion and that frustration and the hardships that the people in our county face. So.
As a communications guy, I want to go with I think he did it, sold it even better than I could. But I guess I'll go with as a data geek, and this might be a bit of a cop out, but it's one of the the first ones, and that's really looking at is creating and establishing those DE&I standards and criteria for our agencies as well as our community partners. I think part of what was great about this approach for the council is that we recognize the impact of institutional racism and how it permeates and touches all parts of county governance. And before we can go and hold our community partners accountable, we need to look at ourselves in the mirror first, and be kind of clear-eyed about that. And the other is you want to make sure that you're not just literally checking boxes and saying, okay, we've got this amount of people, we've got X amount of SEDEs or minority business vendors that we're going to. We need to really make sure that we're having that equitable impact. And so that means we've got to have metrics for that.
Yeah.
And I think that's just going to be so key for all this, finding out what is a real metric that supports an outcome versus just output.
Yeah.
How do we measure that work? And then to, go bringing it back to Dwayne's point, then telling that story, because the public needs to know that we as a county, we're committed to this work, that we're committed to ingraining this in our DNA, and that we're working to remedy this. I think it's so many people. I mean, what we saw in 2020, it's, look, we've been saying this, we've been saying this, we've been saying this. You're not doing anything. Finally, we got to get out and yell at you in your face until you start doing something. And I think that's what this is, a way of answering and kind of responding to that, and making sure that the work that we're doing is really accomplishing the goals that we want, and not just window dressing.
Yeah, I think you both made really, really great points regarding this model, and Bart, you mentioned it recently. Tell us why you think this model is so important when we're trying to build and grow something sustainable.
I mean, I think it's just about, we can't be reactionary, because if you're reactionary, you're always gonna, it's like playing whack-a-mole. I've got to find the next policy. I got to find the next one. And here we got it. And so you've got to take this holistic view. I think this allows us to also, recognize as the commissioners, when they adopted racial equity as a core principle, which is, part and parcel to the creation of this council. It's recognizing that is influences everything else within county governance. And so for us to be able to be the sort of county that we want to be, to be good fiscal stewards, to support economic development, we cannot do that without creating a more racially equitable processes and system. And so I think this allowed us to kind of take that approach and look at it from an intersectional standpoint, and then really create an approach and a framework to accomplish it, that also gives us the flexibility to know that, look, we didn't identify all the issues with these recommendations.
Yeah.
The 11 recommendations aren't going to solve everything. There needs to be room for growth, room to address new issues as they arise, and this kind of framework gives us the flexibility to do that and make those changes as we need to.
Why do you think it's necessary that we approach this work with this model?
Yeah, so I think it's necessary because, when things happen, it's reactive versus responding. So when things happen, we're so accustomed to just reacting, doing something about it right then and there. Emotions are built up when events happen, and we've been doing this for years after years after years and have not covered much ground. And so when you take a step back to think about how can we build something that will last long, how can we make on black and white in paper, make policy to where, now it's restricted for this activity to happen. And if something does happen, now there's a written consequence for it versus just our frustration, our anger, and our response. It doesn't do anything but satisfy us in that moment. But now it creates some accountability. It creates a charge for us to do something different versus just being in the moment, observing it, hearing the feedback from individuals, and experiencing it. This building a framework this way challenges us to do something about it. If that makes sense.
Definitely. When we were looking at best practices at other counties, I think both of you alluded to that, and all of the initiatives and the quality of the work that our Board of Commissioners has done by declaring racism as a public health crisis. You mentioned, Bert, the racial equity being our core principle with our 4 initiatives and goals under that, and even the Rise Together blueprint you talked about, Dwayne, our recommendation as it relates to making sure that we're building better systems for our residents, and our Rise Together Blueprint supports and those initiatives. And this Racial Equity Council definitely has been able to take all of those very important initiatives, very important stands, and build upon what the commissioners believe in so greatly. And I truly appreciate that. Our Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, we have a general email box now. It's odei@franklincounty.ohio.gov. If you are just joining us, we are having a very invigorating conversation regarding our Racial Equity Council. And we are looking for members for our 2022 Racial Equity Council to take on the implementation of this work. And I think both of you talked about the journey that it is. When we entered into the Racial Equity Council, we all were excited, very rightfully so. Let's get this, and I think Bart or Dwayne, you mentioned, let's fix the problem. And then I think halfway through, some folks maybe became exhausted. We get those questions and at our email to say, I don't know if I'm able to do this work. This work is hard. These subjects is hard. I'm not being seen, or maybe my voice isn't going to be heard. What would you say to individuals who are maybe hesitant into doing this work, and is it exhausting? And let's talk about that for a little bit.
Go ahead, Mark.
I will say your voice needs to be heard. That first and foremost. It's so important to just have those diversity of voices and opinions as part of this. And especially, we have people that are saying, hey, look, I'm a fairly, low level staff or entry level staff. And I don't feel like no, we absolutely need you in that room.
Yes.
Because there are, countless other colleagues of yours that, may be experiencing different things, experiencing things that, that others are not going to. And you're not just that voice for your experience, but you're that voice for your other colleagues. But I also think, one of the things I'd say is, leave some space for grace. People don't know what they don't know. Assume good faith, I think, at all times. But that doesn't mean you don't challenge something. If you hear something that you don't agree with it, if it's contrary to your experience, you need to voice it. We wanted to make sure, and sometimes it's, prodding through that is, hey, we haven't heard from you a while, and I want to hear from you. I want you to weigh in, so we can make sure that nothing's being missing. It's a safe space. The conversations that we had, difficult as they were between us, the council, and it's stuff that doesn't leave that room. Unless it's something that you want and let people, want us to share. So you can feel free to really weigh in and talk about your experiences. And I think it's just so important that people do.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing. It's a safe space. So as a Black man and just working, just living, you come to work and then you assimilate to what the work culture is. And then you go home to your community, to your friends or whatnot, and then you express how frustrating it is to be who you are in your work environment and not having a space or having a person or anything like that to really talk about these things with. And so I would say your voice is necessary. Your voice needs to be heard. Your opinion needs to be heard. Everyone has a difference. Everyone has lived experiences, and it's very, what's the word I'm looking for? I feel very privileged, dare I say, to have commissioners and county administrators that's saying like, hey, I think this is important. I want to provide this space, even just internally, provide this space for these things to happen. They recognize that, hey, there are these small conversations and these small irritations that may happen within the workplace that you go home and talk about. No, I want this to be talked about at work, and I would not only want to provide a space for it to be talked about, we want to do something about it. And so, you don't get that everywhere you go. And I would say if you're contemplating, oh, should I do it? I don't know. I'm too different. I have all these things going on. I'm a part of every different community. I don't know if I'll be accepted or not. This is the place for you
Absolutely.
to come to. This is the place for you to be heard. Like Bart mentioned, everything is kept confidential in the group. You can express, you can disagree, you can bring up your opinion, you can talk about why you disagree. But also I would encourage, what it challenges you to do again is to view things from different perspectives.
Yeah.
I have a lived experience. I'm a Black man living in white Ohio, okay, working for Franklin County. And I'm in a direct assistant director's position in animal welfare where there is hardly no Black people, especially at this level of leadership. And to be be employed by an agency, be employed by a county that says, hey, I see you and I care about you and I want to do something about it. That alone is a huge burden relief or weight relief off your shoulders,
Absolutely.
and encouraging to know that, hey, I can be a part of this work to make it better for the next Black man that's going to take my position, or for the next person of any type of difference that wants to come up in advance and do what it is that I'm doing. So you're a forerunner, you're a pioneer, and your voice is needed. So I would say, come to the council, make a difference. Even if you gave, I would encourage you to speak up every time, but even if you gave one opinion that opened up the perspective of another individual, that could save a whole generation of people, a whole line of people that's coming after you, just for you to mention and say one little thing. So if you're thinking about it, quit thinking about it and just do it.
Thank you. Yes, small acts definitely do make great impact.
Absolutely.
And it's something to be said about making sure that we're trying to build sustainable at creating inclusive environments. I am proud to say that we really created an inclusive environment in the Racial Equity Council, not just with diversity of thought, diversity of backgrounds and lived experience, but the diversity of thought definitely was probably the main thing that I was able to learn from other individuals. Like you're saying, you're a Black man coming with your own lived experiences, and we all come from different races, different cultures, and different backgrounds. And being able to listen to others' individuals' perspectives on how they approach the work, view the work, and also providing you some grace too to take that information in and say, okay, there is a larger thing that I'm doing here, and being able to be comfortable expressing myself and being myself and not having to assimilate to an environment where some workplaces may cause you to do. Do you want to add anything to that part?
No, just that, I think that was just the most key. And yeah, being able to just hear from so many different perspectives, and, that you can be like, I'm an ally, I'm here to, but again, you just don't know what you don't know. And that, you're just able to hear from so many different people, and that diversity of thought, and then just the conversations that we're able to have. I think I know, selfishly, it made me a better person, and it's going to leave the county better. And that's that just thing that you're just so proud of, to be part of something that is going to outlast you, outlast, hopefully, if we do it right, everyone, here on this listening, but it's a legacy that you can leave behind, and just making the room just a little bit better than when you came in.
Absolutely. We made a lot of room too we talk about all the time how we want to be a representation of our community. And I think this group definitely was a representation of the community that we are serving. We also discuss a lot of times things are happening in our society. Things happen over the weekend that affect us differently. And now we have to come to work and be on a Zoom call and put it in action and put our professional face on. And there were times where a lot of things were happening in our society that affected the work that we were doing, that we were talking about. We met every 2 weeks for 2 hours. Dwayne and Bart did an excellent job to talk about what those meetings look like. But sometimes we had to change that cadence. You want to talk about that a little bit of why we had to do that?
Yeah, sometimes it was, like Damika said, an event took place and it was just too heavy on everyone. We had several trials that took place over since the pandemic hit. And, though the impact, waiting to hear the news, just the heaviness in the room, in the virtual room, was just felt, and we could not, keeping in mind the individuals that are on the council, we didn't have it in us to push forward to talking about these recommendations during this session. And so sometimes it was just necessary, keeping into consideration, we are dealing with real people. This is real work, not just something that we're checking off on a checkbox, but it's real work. So reading the room and understanding what's happening in the environment, we wanted to leave space for everyone to just breathe and to just talk about what's going on, and then end after that and not go into any type of breakout rooms or recommendations, because sometimes you just need a space to breathe and to process through the thoughts of what's happening in our world right now, what's happening to our brothers, our sisters, our sons, our daughters, all those things, and what's going to happen to me, what's going to happen to, I don't have children, but what's going to happen to my black son if I had a black son, those are real life things that you bring, baggage you bring with you into work. And so it was necessary for our leaders in this on this council to just sit back and allow us to breathe and decompress and talk to those things.
I mean, I believe we had a meeting on the day of the ruling in the Derek Chauvin case for the murder of George Floyd. And, that was one of those days where, again, we cannot not address the elephant in the room. But then on top of that, you get hours later, the police killing here in Columbus of Micaiah Bryant. And we created a thing that the next day and just said, recognition that this was after work, but that this is a group of people that's, been willing to have these conversations, and to know that this is something that has got to, triggering doesn't even do it justice, to allow people and create a forum for them to just be able to express those feelings, knowing that we weren't going to meet in 2 weeks' time, but we need people, what they've gone through right now through this, to be able to speak. So, creating that forum, even when it wasn't officially on the clock or officially county work, we wanted to be there for each other and supportive. And I think that sort of flexibility to, look at, not ignore what's going on in the world around us, with the protests around critical race theory, and we're able to say, okay, what does that actually look like here, and talk about and discuss it, and then still bring it back to the work that we're doing, because again, it's all intersectional. I think that was one of the unique aspects of the council, and I think one of the really necessary things, to have that flexibility and say, sometimes, we gotta hit a pause here, because we've got to make sure that everybody is in a place where they can, really approach this work the way they need to. And sometimes that means you need to decompress, you need to scream into a pillow, or have the support of 30 of your colleagues from the county, from all over, to know that they can hear you, and that the way you're feeling, it's absolutely valid.
Yeah, I think I will also add that limited to one of our Racial Equity Council recommendations of ensuring that our county employees have access to a DEI trauma specialist, ensuring that we are raising our voices as it relates to mental wellness. We are raising our voices as it relates to self-care and what that means. We are all impacted by the things that are around us, but the work doesn't stop. But that also means taking that step back, providing that self-care for ourselves, and moving forward in a more invigorating way and a more motivating way to ensure that we are doing what we can do here at this level. We've also been getting some questions regarding, hey, do I need to be in a leadership position? Do I need to be a person of color? Do I need to have a particular title? Or maybe I have some invisible disabilities that I don't know if I could really do the work. Is there an elite characteristic of what a racial equity council member looks like when we're talking about creating inclusive environments? From your perspective as racial equity council alums, tell us about the characteristic of a racial equity council member.
Yeah, I mean, it's just as plain as how you were born, or how you have everything you've acquired through your life up until this point. So I mean, it is very, very diverse in every kind of way. Like Tamika mentioned, the invisible handicaps, if I will, physical handicaps, invisible handicaps, or mental. If you struggle with mental illness or anything like that, all those things are needed and necessary. Just whatever your individual difference is, what makes up you, is what the council looks like. So I know it's called the Racial Equity Council. It's not a black and white thing or Asian, Pacific Islander, anything like that. It's not just that. It's just whatever makes you unique is what makes up the council.
Yeah, I think you need those voices. I mean, the traits that I'm looking for are, one, we want it to be representative of the county, representative of our agencies. And so that covers the entire gamut. But I want you to be curious. I want you to be passionate, passionate about social change, but really that's about it. Be willing to be involved. Don't be, shy about sharing your voice, because we need it heard. But also, be willing to be curious and willing to learn new things, open-minded to it. But that doesn't matter if you are a clerical staff at JFS, if you are a director over at sanitary engineering, anywhere in between. We need you guys. We need you as part of this to help create this and implement it. There's don't need to be leadership or anything like that. Need all voices.
Absolutely. And our county administrator is on this webinar, just text me and saying he wants to ensure that everyone knows that this is open to all. This is very important work to our county administrator and to our board of commissioners. No one is excluded from the Racial Equity Council. All members, all staff are welcome to apply and be a part of this Racial Equity Council. Moving the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion is the work of everyone. It is a work to make sure that we have allies and support in this work. It is a work to make sure that we are raising our voices when and wherever possible is necessary to ensure that we are moving the work of diversity, equity, and inclusion and accessibility for everyone that is involved. I've definitely appreciated this work and the conversation that we have, and working to build a sustainable model for our board of commissioner agencies that will live past all of us really and last a lifetime on how we approach this work. Our times will change. We have made some great impacts here through our board of commissioner agencies, and we are answering the call to the things that are happening to our society and the things that are happening in internal work. And since you guys were on the alumni, what are some things that you're looking forward to seeing change and implemented for this new Racial Equity Council to have to do moving forward in this journey?
So I will say one thing I'm looking forward to seeing implemented is developing the councils at each individual agency. Because we talked about a lot of things on the first council, but one thing that I see there's a disconnect is, what does this mean to me? When I'm talking to my kennel attendants at the dog shelter, how does this impact me individually? What does this mean to me? And so I think it'll be very beneficial when we have these councils at each individual agency. So I'm looking forward to seeing the next council members really kind of map those things out to see realistically what it will look like and really operationalize these recommendations.
I'm looking forward to seeing some of the names that we saw on the attendee list here earlier submitting their applications. Tamika Bumper, I see you. I see others.
Yes,
Oh yeah. But no, I mean, I think again, this is the opportunity as a data geek. I'm looking forward to seeing what are the sort of metrics? How do you create, effective metrics that can really support and measure this work? And then, the communications part, creating a hub for all this so we can get that information out to our county. I think that's, and all of our residents, I think that is such a, important aspect of this too. So we can, be held accountable by them, so we can hold ourselves to account. And so we can also begin looking at our community partners and our partnerships and seeing how we can leverage the power of the county, as a purchaser, as a funder, to really create that change and implement it on an even broader scale.
Yeah, absolutely. It is definitely important work for all of our agencies, and you talked about the recommendation as it relates to building standards and measures and creating policies to really embed our diversity, equity, and inclusion work into the fabric of this organization. In the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, I talked about myself and my position as the chief, Leandra Chakurls as our DEI program administrator, and Lydia Cleaver Bartholomew is here as our data analyst intern, and Marlise Ryan is our economic equity administrator who has really been leading our work in our supplier diversity space. It is super important that, I think Bart, you were alluding to that we work to include inclusive practices for our contracts, for our procurement processes, and we have recommendations that have been created to ensure that we continue to build our diversity, equity, and inclusion and across all of our internal agencies. And our office has been working really hard at collaborating with other county agencies like our economic development planning, our PFM, and all of our agencies,
Yes.
our purchasing department. You get to name call, and if I forget someone, but those are the ones that are job and family services, and really making sure that not only are we have this at the table, but able to offer information that was directly created by our council to ensure our recommendations are a part of those internal policies and practices and operations. And that is the work that the council has done to ensure that we have that as our strategic planning in the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. Bart and Dwayne talked about how important your voices is to be heard, a part of this council, how important that all individuals are represented, no matter your position, no matter your background, no matter what barrier you think you have. We need you here as a member of this council. We have about a little over 10 minutes. Did you have another question, Leandra, for the
did.
group?
Yes. What advice would you have for the 2022 Racial Equity Council members?
Well, I mean, I think we've said it kind of throughout this conversation, but my advice would be just to bring your voice and to be open-minded about the other perspectives of other individuals. Sometimes you could come to the council with your own agenda, which is not wrong at all, because we all come from a different place, but be willing to listen to all of those things so that when you do go out into your breakout sessions, you're able to really think outside of the box and be more and pull certain ideas and things out of you, coupled with the perspective of other individuals as you think about making these recommendations or implementing these recommendations for a broader audience, for our residents and considering everybody. So keeping an open mind, being willing to do this work for people that are coming after you. Just always keeping that in mind, like I'm doing this for what we're going through right now, but more so for what's and who's to come after me. Someone has always has to be a trailblazer or make way. We don't have a window or have a door until somebody knocks it out and puts the framework in so other people can walk through it. So just keep that in mind, that you're making pathways, you're opening doors, creating windows so that people can freely move through. And so, that would be my advice.
I think we've touched on it, that also be clear-eyed again about the challenge that we're facing, the challenges, You know, the recognition that, you know, even the county, for as much as it can do, there are some things when it comes to policy and, you know, that requires state legislation, it requires federal legislation. That doesn't mean we don't do everything that we can do from a county to advance this work. But I think it's important to kind of be clear-eyed as a council member, but at the same time recognize and celebrate the successes that we do have and that you're doing. I mean, I think that's just, if anything, just for your mental health, because this is heavy stuff. I don't want to sugarcoat that part. That doesn't mean it's not also some of the most rewarding work that I've done in my 7 years with the county, because it certainly is. I also think, you know, again, I don't want to discount just the leadership development part of this from a council. Again, just the kind of framework that we were able to kind of develop through the training that we were able to receive at the beginning of it. It helps you in so many other different areas of your work. It helps you ask, you know, different questions of yourself if you're a supervisor, or if you aren't a supervisor, but maybe you're looking for a leadership position for it. This gives you, you know, not only the you know, skills to help more effectively and inclusively work with and collaborate with your coworkers. It's also great networking, or able to meet people from across the county, from all sorts of different areas that, you know, you're still able to stay in touch with. You're able to learn different stuff about different subject matter. And while, you know, I don't want to, you know, I've met people on the council that have said, oh, I'd like to poach them over at JFS. And that's fine. And that's fine, because the JFS, we get plenty of our staff that has moved over. We cough to me, cough Jody behind the camera. All kinds. So this is a really great opportunity to network with other people from across the county that are passionate about this work. And I really think I'm so glad to have been able to be part of it, and cannot recommend it highly enough.
Absolutely. I appreciate you offering those characteristics and being honest about the reality of the work that's ahead in our implementation. I think I will add to, you know, having a willing and open heart and mind. We want to hear from everyone. We want those on the council to ensure that you're coming with that willingness and acceptance to not only learn. We had some really great learning opportunities that we were able to connect with. And these were learning opportunities that just didn't lend itself to the council. And I think you mentioned a little bit of that part too. These are things that you can take with you to your job and have direct application and leading where you are. So if you're saying I'm not the supervisor, or I'm not in that position yet, or maybe leadership is not something that I was always interested in, leading where you are is definitely one of the things that I think is one of the best practices that you can do in the organization, because we all have a role to play, not only in the position that we have been hired in, but definitely in this journey of diversity, equity, and inclusion. I want to thank you, Dwayne, and you, Bart, and Public Affairs, and again, our county commissioners, President Crawley, Commissioner Boyce, and Commissioner O'Grady, and our deputy county administrators, Eric Janis, Chris Long, and Joy Bivens, and our county administrator, Kenneth Wilson, for continually to lead this effort and supporting the work. Do you have any closing comments? I think one of my closing comments is apply. Definitely to be a part of the Racial Equity Council. If you have any questions about anything that we discussed here, or you are writing down some questions and you want to contact any one of us on our team, you can email us at odei@franklincounty.ohio.gov. You can call me at 614-525-4105. We will get your question answered. You please complete the application and went out in Chronos last week. You can email that to our team at odei@franklincounty.ohio.gov. There are 2021 inaugural alumni of Racial Equity Council members in your organization. Seek them out, ask them questions that maybe were not addressed here. If you know someone personally, your colleague, no better way to get information from your peer about their personal experience if you're thinking about joining us on this journey. And like I said before, and I will continue to say, it is the work of all of us to ensure DEI is embedded into the fabric of our organization. Any closing remarks?
Yes, reiterate, apply, please. To become a DEI champion, you have to take part in the work. And we do not expect you to already have that experience or be a champion already. So please don't let that deter you. If this is an area that you have not worked with before, we train on the job, right? So that's what we're going to do. So yes, put in the application, please. We are here.
Just to echo again, and you know, if you're a JFSer tuning in, seek me out, seek out Satasha, Chris Watson, any of us, we're happy to talk about it more, about your experience, but just couldn't encourage you enough.
Yeah, and if you want to come by the dog shelter,
Yeah. Do that, man. That's
come on by the dog shelter. Just pop in there and just say, "Hey, I'm looking for Dwayne," or want to see a dog and want to talk to Dwayne about this council stuff. And so, feel free to do so. I'm open to conversation about it, and just apply. If you think about it, and I just hope this comes out the right way, but there's a leader, everyone leads in some type of way. So there's always someone looking at you. When you walk outside in your neighborhood, you don't know who's looking out the windows. There's always someone that's looking at you. So what you do will make a difference. Your impact, a small impact or a small contribution can make a huge impact. So don't think that you're lesser than, or that, what you have to bring is not enough. What you have to bring is exactly what we need. So just apply, and ask questions.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you everyone for joining our webinar today. And I think Leandra did have some closing remarks as it relates to the application.
Yes, we will actually extend the deadline until Friday, the 25th, to allow just a little extra time to complete the application, pull your thoughts together. We definitely understand that is needed. So yes, please have the additional time, February 25th. And any questions, comments, concerns, please email us and let us know.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you to the ODEI team, and thank you to our guest panelists, our 2021 Racial Equity Council alum, Dwayne Young and Bart Logan. Have a great day.
Thank you.